You're a founder or an entrepreneur. You wanna take your company value to 300 million, we gon' show you how to do it. But we got the roadmap, the aspirations. We'll give you a game plan and strategies. Seize control of your company's destiny today by tuning in to Private Capital Mastery. Let's start the show.
Welcome back to the Private Capital Mastery podcast and community. I'm your host, Brian Franco. In every episode, we try and show up with more information on how you could grow, scale to selling of your company. And in doing so, I thought it was very important to have a guest today with InterTrue, my good friend, Mr. Rick Girard. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I mean,
Yes.
we were just chatting a moment ago. I think that one of the very first times I did a podcast was on your podcast.
Yep, I took your virginity.
You did. So the higher power, my podcast virginity.
I started it already. So
this is your fault.
It's going to be a fun one. Yeah,
this is your fault.
It's a downward spiral from here.
But listen up. Like you are, and you have been working on this concept. So InterTrue, the way I understand it, it's an AI SaaS company.
Yep.
And it's designed to do what?
So it's designed to actually help entrepreneurs and business leaders hire people that are aligned with core values first, skills second.
Okay.
And make sure that you're getting the right people in the right seat every time.
Yeah.
That's kind of our brand promise.
And that's key, absolutely key, because especially with our service clients, right?
Yeah.
You know, your assets go home at night. You hope they come back tomorrow, right? And sometimes they're working remotely now, so let's just be real there. But the reality is, your people are your assets.
100%.
So with that said, are you saying to me that you could align bad assets?
Oh, every company does, right?
Okay.
If you think about most companies, especially startups, when they start, that's when you make all the mistakes in the world. You have no interview process. So we drill down on the interview process because that's really the biggest thing that either draws in or repels a candidate. So if you want to hire A players in your company, you better be really good at interviewing.
I see.
That's the thing. And if you're not, which most of us are not because we've never been trained how to interview.
True.
Right? We have conversations and we make decisions based on whether or not we want to have a beer with somebody as opposed to, well, is this person going to bring value to the company and help grow the business? Yeah. And we make assumptions on that, like, oh, well, you know, they worked at XYZ company or they worked at Google, so they probably do great here, right? Man, we make tons of assumptions, and those are more often wrong than they are right. Yeah. And so, like, we keep repeating the same issues over and over again, right? And we do it throughout our career, make bad hires.
So you give the example of a startup. Like, now talk to me about an existing company that has, let's say, 50 plus employees. Yeah. The idea is that they have core values, right?
Hopefully they do. Hopefully every company has core values, whether or not they have them. Well, most of them have them on a wall, but they aren't real, right? And the ones that actually do lead through core value alignment, they're usually pretty good at trying to assess people for that. Okay. But they're few. And then you take it down to a startup level when that's kind of the most important thing for the success of the company. And a lot of companies just don't even, CEOs just don't think about that. Yeah. Because we're so focused on figuring out product market fit and, whether or not we can sell the product and then building the product and, doing the things that are important, but they don't, your number one biggest responsibility as a founder or CEO of a company is to make sure you have the right people on the bus that are like moving you in the same direction. So InterTrue does exactly that, right? Yeah. We actually empower people to do that by leading the interview process and then helping them to extract evidence to support whether or not somebody really does align, number one, with the core values, but then number two, with the mission of the company and bring the appropriate skill set to carry them through. So do you find that when a new hire comes on, absent of your process, absent of your software, right? What's the likely outcome in situations like that? Is it higher turnover? Is it lower morale? Is it bad culture? Is it all of the above? Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. Lots of things can happen. I have a podcast too, and I bring on CEOs, and they share their stories of bad hires that were made, and all these terrible things that I get to hear about. Yes. And there's all a common denominator, which is like, we talked to somebody, we thought they were going to be good, we hired them, and then they kind of came in, and for the first 90 days, they destroyed the culture, and then we had to get rid of them, right? Like that's a recurring theme that happens with a lot of companies. So
can you repair culture though in a situation like that? Or
yeah, I mean, you're backtracking now to go to where the point in which before that person joined, you're repairing it, and then you have to go forward again. So it's like a giant leap back, and then you got to tiptoe forward again. True. And that's really disruptive to the business.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, again, it's your responsibility to grow that company. Yeah. And here's the thing. One of the things that I've keyed in on is that a lot of times we're impatient as entrepreneurs. We want to get somebody like in that seat and get them doing the work. And so when somebody looks reasonably good, we talk ourselves into it, right? It's kind of like going on a speed date, and you're like, oh, that person's cute, so might as well just, start dating them, right? Don't talk about anything. And that's seriously like what happens, right? And when that need overwhelms your reason, then that's when we get into trouble.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, have you analyzed the cost to
yes.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I know exactly. So like, I'll tell you this story. Like early on in my career, actually, I transitioned my business to retained search. Okay. About 12 years ago. Yeah. And my very first search that I took on, I worked with a company to help them find a VP of engineering. The CEO and the candidate went into a meeting, an interview. Came out, and the CEO was like, yes, we love this person. We want to hire him. I made him an offer, and he accepted. I'm like, okay, great. Tell me about the interview. Oh, well, we talked about the Oakland A's for 45 minutes. It's his favorite baseball team, my favorite baseball team. And I'm like, whoa. Hold on. Like, let's back up, right? Yeah. So I fought him on it. I'm like, look, you can't make a hiring decision based on the fact that you guys both have a common love for the same baseball team. Exactly. And he's like, nope, we're going to hire him. And I go, look, this is going to bite you in the ass. And I'm going to be here, but it's going to cost you even more for me to fix this. And I had other candidates that I thought were stronger candidates. Yeah. So anyway, fast forward 6 months, almost to the day, he calls me and he goes, hey, look, we had to fire so-and-so, and I want my money back. Wow. And I was like, look. Wow. I call this. And actually, what it cost him was not just what he paid him. My fee was over $100,000. And then like what he was paying the candidate for those 6 months. Plus, this candidate came in and ran out 2 of his top performers in the company. That's unfortunate. So he ended up losing out. Like we did the math. He lost about just under $1 million in 6 months by hiring that guy. Actual cost or opportunity costs? Both. Both. Yeah. That's unfortunate. Actually, we didn't even factor in the opportunity cost, but just the loss of his 2 key players. Correct. That was, That stings. That hurts. That stings a lot. I mean, that set him back probably a year. Yeah. And so, this is important to us because in the capital events that we drive, whether it be, they're a client seeking debt for growth or they're seeking an equity partner for an exit strategy, all or in part. We really need to make sure that the people, from our standpoint, from our process, we want to make sure that they're just going to continue on with the organization. We don't necessarily look into, in our due diligence process, are they the right fit? We just know that they have fit. We never, because the reality is we don't get to, and nor do we want to interview everyone in the organization because, as you know, these are confidential transactions that we're conducting. Yeah. And so, there are some boundaries and borders in and around that, but there's some things that you guys could look into, like history, right? Like, what's their attrition rate? Like, of course. Like those are kind of important things. Yeah. I mean, because if the company's mismanaged and they're losing people, but I mean, if they got people that are sticking around, correct. Those are really good signs that you got a healthy business. Yeah. And we do take those snapshots. We'll try to understand, what the org chart looks like, who's where, how long have they been there, so on and so forth. And it gives you that perspective that you need. For sure. But as a company that is growing and that is scaling, right, can InterTrue, is it really at a place where it can
guarantee alignment, or is it?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, walk me through
that.
Yeah,
we're putting our money where our mouth is, right? So, I mean, so does it, so like, you know, if you look at like a typical interview process, you often have a better, you often have a better chance of actually just walking into a room and flipping a coin, and you call it in the air like, hey, heads you're hired, tails you're not. Because a lot of the data that's extracted from an interview just happens to be like, you know, circumstantial. It's not really anything that gives you any sort of in-depth data to make a decision based on.
I see.
That's what we're helping each interviewer to extract and be able to feed up the organization. So, you know, does this person operate in a way that's natural to how the rest of the team that's performing operates? So do they naturally have those traits and behaviors? And it's not really competencies, because it's also like, you know, it's also things like positioning. Is this person really desiring a company like yours?
Yeah.
And then also performance.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of assessments that can tell you, you know, competencies and how people's personalities are, but they can't identify a high performer versus somebody who's not.
Yeah.
And if you just, you know, look at the data, you only have like probably 10, 20% of the population that are high performers. And you know, everybody else kind of trickles down.
Correct.
So if you want to build a strong organization, you want to focus in on getting high performers, and you want evidence to be able to like look at and go, okay, look at past performance is usually a key indicator of future performance.
Yes.
So if we
Absolutely.
operate the same way, and essentially this person made an impact in their last organization, then there's a pretty strong chance that they're going to do the same for you as long as you don't screw it up.
So are you looking at a consensus of the entire organization and aligning those 10% players and everyone else? Like, is there a certain equilibrium or balance of a group, or does it really depend on the organization?
I mean, I'm kind of a snob in that, like, I want to have all 10%ers around me. Like,
you want the all-star team?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, of course.
Why not shoot for that?
Yeah, of course.
You know, because I've seen organizations, I mean, where you hire somebody who's just not even, in the eyes of the corporation, an important player, but they can still drag down the rest of the company, right? And I think that's why we run into issues like litigation and you know, wrongful termination, and all these things, because we're not really putting in the diligence on the interview on the interview side, to make sure that, hey, look at this person's going to align with the organization, and we're not going to have that many problems with them.
That's powerful. I mean, because if you can streamline and improve that process of selecting the right individual, the likelihood of success for that organization is going to be greater. Yeah. The outcome of the performance of that business is likely to be better, right? That's as relevant to what we do in the M&A world and investment banking, the enterprise value of that organization will likely be higher. Yeah. Right? And so, I mean, this is the recipe we're always looking for, and this is why I thought it was very important for the audience tuning in to really understand what's available to them in terms of these tools. For sure. So
you know what? I just heard some data. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
I just heard some data. That, good point. I mean, if you want me to ham it up, I will. No, you know what? So here's the thing. I just went to I'm like a big lifelong learner. So like I did this training with a guy named Jack Daly. Do you know who Jack is?
I don't know.
He's a sales trainer who's like a phenomenal ball of energy. He's like 85 years old. And I'm like, dude, this guy's exhausting me. Like, unbelievable. But he was sharing some data that they found that, you know, companies that are purpose and mission driven compared to like just their competitors, right? So he used the example of Southwest and I think Patagonia was the one he dug into. Patagonia is, they outperform their competitor by like 756%, like their main competitor. Like that's how solid that business is because of the fact that they've focused in on building people first, and then, you know,
I see that, because I was going to jump in and say it's almost Patagonia has purpose. Yeah. Right? And so when you have a purpose, you know, people aren't necessarily coming to work with you, you know, for the product as much as they are coming for the purpose. But if the purpose feeds the product and vice versa, you win.
Exactly.
And you said 750 to 1?
Yeah, it's like 756% higher than their nearest competitor. He used Version, he used Zappos, he used a couple other ones too, which are all purpose. They're all kind of culture interrelated, but they're all driven by core values.
Yeah.
And so the way in which they measure people as they come in is like, is this purpose important to you? But also, do you operate the same way? I think Amazon did a masterful job of this in the very beginning, where they built around, I think it was something like 70% of the hiring decision was based on whether or not you align with their leadership principles, which to my core values.
Yes.
And the number one was always customer obsession. So if you can't give examples of how you're customer obsessed, and like that's the way you operate, they didn't hire you.
Wow. And
so like just one. All you need is one thing that like this is the main most critical thing, especially if you're a startup, and let's say you're looking for a co-founder, right? That's your most important hire, and you've got to have one thing in which you guys are both aligned on that you can make decisions by and make it defensible for you guys to fight.
You and I were talking, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Or iron sharpens iron, right? So you want to be able to challenge each other to be accountable to one another, which sometimes causes friction or arguments, right? But ultimately, if you have rules to play by, right, and if you're still focused on the same purpose, it's more likely that you'll come to a solution and conclusion than you wouldn't, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we were talking about, when do you start? So when does InterTrue come in? And you told me, well, on your first hire, and to the story you just shared right now, and finding your co-founder, right, or finding a co-founder, that was the first hire. Granted, it was an equity hire, right, as a co-founder.
Actually, everybody that's been working for me has been working in equity right now.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because we're poor.
But the reality,
but we bootstrap this, and we're.
But that resonates because it goes to show that everyone that's part of the organization, right, is showing up because of you as a leader and the vision that you built, right? Because if you compare yourself just for a moment to, and this is not supposed to be funny, but a 501c3, right? So you have volunteers that show up to a 501c3, and they're following that leader not because they're getting a paycheck. They're following that leader because they believe in that purpose and they're willing to spend their time and their energy to serve that purpose.
For sure.
You've done that.
Yeah,
you've done that. I mean, granted, there is benefit and reward, right? As you continue to grow and launch the platform, but that's a powerful statement, by the way.
Yeah, luckily, I mean, I've just been able to, and like, here's the thing, recruiting takes time. You have to be patient.
Yeah,
and you have to you really have to find people that gravitate with the mission, and it's important to them too.
Yep.
Because again, if somebody wants something that you're offering, because look at everybody's going to work on a daily basis, and you see people on the 405 just like,
is it the soul-sucking 405?
Thank good it's Friday. There's so many people that hate what they do and they hate their job, but they just do it every day because they got to put food on the table. Wow. But when you can give them something more concrete, that they really bite into. Like, I'm so proud of the fact that the people who have decided to team up with us and who are helping us build this thing they're committed and they're doing just such a phenomenal job. I don't really feel like it's for me. I think just feel like it's just been us making sure that we're aligning with the right souls. Yeah, that makes sense.
It does make sense. And so, this is not something you just started, a couple of weeks ago in your garage.
No, we've been working on it for a while.
And arguably, you've been working on this your entire career.
Pretty much,
everything that you've learned along the way, right? Because it's part art, part science.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you're teaching the AI to understand and to calculate and to, produce alignment.
Yeah, our secret sauce is the method, right? Because and it's taken me years to develop this method through my experience of being a professional search a headhunter, right? I've lived my whole life, you only eat what you kill, basically. So exactly. Straight commission, that's it.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
so you learn how to be efficient.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was more about, you know, when a hire didn't work out, it always came back to me. Correct. And I didn't like that feeling.
Yes.
You know, I like to be able to say, hey, yeah, I'm the person who put that person in there. And they go, yeah, this guy was amazing and he crushed it for us, right? So, you know, maybe it's a little bit of I don't like to lose coupled with the fact that I don't like to lose.
Yeah, no, it 100% does. Yeah. And so therefore your experiences have now been embedded in what you developed in InterTrue. So look, I think this is extremely valuable. Ultimately, you know, you're either going to subscribe to this or not. And if you don't have core values, you know, your advice is probably to establish those. And
good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But so what did you mean earlier when you said they weren't real? Like some companies have core values, but they're not real.
Yeah. You know how you walk into companies, like large companies are famous for this, right? Okay. Like they put money into building out core values now. But like if you ever walked into an office and it says like integrity, teamwork, collaboration, and some other bullshit word, right? I think you could buy those
stock photos anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And nobody knows what any of those mean, right? Like what does integrity mean? By the way, Enron's #1 core value was integrity. So, you know,
they must have hid that somewhere. It was like in somewhere.
Yeah. So like for us, our core values are you first, dig deeper, commit to action, and re-evolutionary. Yeah. And they have meanings, and we have a definition of what those mean. So we have each one has a paragraph on how we outward face and interact with each other. And then we take those, we drill them down into the behaviors, or we call attributes, that essentially like drive those behaviors. And that's what we're able to measure. Those are the things that are like the most important thing, because again, if I say my, collaboration's important, but like you have a bunch of remote people that never talk and it's siloed, right? People just don't buy your core values, they don't buy into it, and then you just have the Wild West, right? That's true. And that's the thing, is that as leaders we're running, the Wild West and just hoping shit doesn't blow up on us.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. So that's helpful, because there again, I think some listening and tuning in are just starting to understand this for the first time. Maybe they've been working on this for years. There could be burnout. There's all sorts of scenarios I'm sure that you see, but how do folks get in touch with you? I mean, I see you have the t-shirt. It's pretty obvious.
InterTrue.ai. I'm really active on LinkedIn, so you can catch me on LinkedIn. Also, you can drop me an email at rick@intertrue.ai, or you can call me. I'll throw it. And so you can give me a buzz. I'm going to leave some mystery.
Okay, leave some mystery for us.
So you can find if you can find my number, which is pretty easy if you use a tool like Chatterworks, or look at, I'm plugging my friend's company.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's totally fine. So I mean, I encourage them to reach out to you, because look, we want to work with clients ultimately that have that right culture, that have that right alignment, that can be scaled and can be grown, because ultimately that's what the marketplace wants. That's what investors want to see. And if they don't see it, sometimes these investments don't go well. Yeah. But if they don't see it, or they identify that, like, okay, this is a problem, then they won't even invest to begin with. Yeah. Right. And that reveals itself in the due diligence process, which is extremely crucial and extremely important. Yep. So I'll tell you right now, the first deal that we do where a company is engaged InterTrue, I'll say today, like, I'm confident that going through that due diligence process will be much easier, much more like less forced, right, natural, than not having that system, because there's all sorts of tools out there, right? There's tools that will teach you and how to build culture and workshop, but if it's but if you're trying, but my point is you have to do that. It's a front end game. Yeah, not a reactive game.
My challenge with a lot of these tools is like they've always been built by people, because it's an easy barrier to entry to get into HR tech, right? Like if you're in so most of the people that build these companies, and maybe I'm ripping on them, I don't know, but they've never worked professionally in the business.
I see.
They just kind of had an idea and they read some data from a university. And it's
a case study somewhere.
And it makes sense, but the truth is it's not practical.
Well, that's what I love about what you built is that it is practical. You've tested it for how many years have you been a headhunter?
At least 10 years, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, you've tested it, you've seen what works, you've seen what doesn't work, and what, to your point earlier, what doesn't work ends up being a $0 paycheck.
For sure.
And that's painful. And so that kept you accountable, right, to picking the right projects, the right people with the right companies.
Yeah.
And here you are. And so I congratulate you on your success and where you are and what you've developed. I'd love to hear how things go. We'll stay in touch, of course. I see you all the time.
Yeah, because I call you every once in a while just to say, dude, how's the hair? How's the hair? Because I'm missing mine. Like, when I have those days where I'm like, hey, I wonder what it look like. Oh, Brian's got good hair. I'll call Brian.
Well, maybe what we do is just transpose my hair or something. But no, and if you get a chance, go check out the Newport Beach yacht show. It'll be a fun time.
Yeah, I don't want to because then I'm going to get itching to buy a boat.
Yeah, I hear you. I wish I didn't get seasick, but that's another story.
Gotcha.
Well, Rick, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Dude, thanks for having me on the show. This is awesome.
Yeah, love it.
And thanks for making me jealous of your office because I'm looking at the airport.
Well, it's airplanes.
Yeah.
It's still
it gets
fun.
Old though real quick.
Yeah, it does. And loud. And thank you all for participating and listening to this episode of the Private Capital Mastery Podcast. I encourage you to tune in next week as we unpack more details and really share our playbook on how to continue to develop your company, scale it, all for the purposes of creating generational wealth and that ultimate exit strategy. I'm Brian Franco, and I'll see you soon.